Captain Marcus Thompson adjusted his earpiece one final time as he surveyed the sprawling courtyard of Windsor Castle. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient stone walls, creating a picturesque backdrop for what was supposed to be a routine royal engagement. At 42 years old, Marcus had spent 15 years protecting members of the royal family, and his weathered face bore the subtle lines of a man who had seen both the beautiful and dangerous sides of public service. Today's event was particularly special. Princess Catherine was scheduled to meet with children from the local community center, many of whom were battling serious illnesses or came from disadvantaged backgrounds. The Hope and Dreams charity event had been planned for months, with over 300 families invited to attend this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet royalty in person. Marcus's trained eyes swept across the gathering crowd with the practiced efficiency of a seasoned professional. Near the ornate fountain, elderly Mr. Peterson sat in his wheelchair, his granddaughter Emma beside him, both dressed in their Sunday best for this special occasion. The 8-year-old girl clutched a handmade drawing she had spent weeks perfecting, hoping to present it to the princess. Emma's mother, Jennifer, stood nearby with tears already forming in her eyes. Her daughter had been battling leukemia for 2 years, and this visit represented a bright spot in what had been an incredibly difficult journey. The media area buzzed with activity as photographers checked their equipment and reporters prepared their notes. Royal correspondent James Mitchell had covered dozens of these events, but he never tired of witnessing the genuine joy that radiated from families during these special encounters. The seasoned journalist had learned to position himself where he could capture both the formal moments and the spontaneous interactions that made these events. Marcus's communication device crackled to life as Officer Sarah Collins reported from her position near the main entrance. "All clear on the east side, Captain. The princess's motorcade should arrive in approximately 10 minutes. Sarah had been Marcus's partner for 3 years, and their professional relationship was built on mutual respect and unwavering trust. Her attention to detail and quick thinking had proven invaluable during their time working together. As Marcus continued his security sweep, he noticed the usual mix of excitement and nervousness that accompanied these royal visits. Mrs. Thompson, no relation, despite sharing his surname, was frantically trying to smooth down her son Michael's unruly hair while simultaneously checking that his shirt was properly tucked in. The 10-year-old boy had been selected to present flowers to the princess, an honor that had kept him awake with excitement for the past week. The castle staff moved with quiet efficiency, making final preparations for the royal arrival. Groundskeeper William Davies had spent the early morning hours ensuring that every flower bed was perfectly manicured and every pathway was spotless. His team had worked tirelessly to create an environment worthy of hosting royalty, and their pride in their work was evident in every carefully tended detail. Marcus's attention was drawn to a group of teenagers gathered near the castle gift shop. Their behavior seemed harmless enough. Typical teenage excitement, mixed with attempts to appear nonchalant about meeting a real princess. 16-year-old Sophie Roberts was trying to convince her friends that she wasn't nervous, but her shaking hands betrayed her true feelings. She had written a letter to the princess months ago, never expecting a response, and was still amazed to find herself here today. The security team had spent weeks preparing for this event, conducting background checks on all attendees and coordinating with local law enforcement agencies. Detective Inspector Robert Hayes from the local police force had positioned plainclothes officers throughout the crowd, their presence invisible to the general public, but providing an additional layer of protection that Marcus found reassuring. As the minutes ticked by, Marcus felt the familiar heightening of his senses that came with any royal protection assignment. Every face in the crowd had been photographed and vetted. Every possible escape route had been mapped and memorized, and contingency plans had been developed for various scenarios. Yet despite all the preparation, Marcus knew that the greatest threats often came from the unexpected, the variables that no amount of planning could fully anticipate. The morning air carried the sounds of excited chatter, children's laughter, and the clicking of camera shutters as families took photos to commemorate this special day. Local businessman George Adams had closed his shop early to bring his entire family to the event. seeing it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expose his children to history in the making. Marcus's radio crackled again as the advance team confirmed the princess's imminent arrival. He took one final look around the courtyard, his experienced gaze taking in every detail of the scene that was about to unfold. The families had been arranged in a carefully planned sequence that would allow the princess to move through the crowd safely while ensuring that each child would have their moment to shine. Little did anyone know that among this sea of hopeful faces and excited families, a man with dark intentions was already in position, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The events that were about to unfold would test Marcus's skills, challenge his reflexes, and ultimately prove that sometimes the difference between life and death can be measured in mere seconds. The stage was set for a day that would be remembered, not for its planned moments of joy, but for an act of heroism that would capture the world's attention and demonstrate the true meaning of selfless service. The distinctive sound of the royal motorcade approaching sent a ripple of excitement through the assembled crowd. Marcus positioned himself at his designated post, his sharp eyes continuing their methodical scan of the courtyard as the black vehicles came to a smooth stop at the castle's main entrance. Princess Catherine emerged with her characteristic grace, her warm smile immediately lighting up the faces of the waiting families. Dressed in a vibrant yellow dress that seemed to capture and reflect the morning sunlight, the princess moved with the practiced ease of someone who had attended thousands of such events. Yet there was something genuinely special about her interactions with children that set her apart from formal royal duties. As she approached the first family in line, her entire demeanor shifted from polite professionalism to authentic warmth. An interest at 8-year-old Emma Peterson was third in line, clutching her carefully crafted drawing with hands that trembled slightly from both excitement and the ongoing effects of her chemotherapy treatments. Her artwork depicted a castle surrounded by rainbows and flowers, with stick figures of herself, and the princess holding hands in the center. She had spent countless hours in the hospital working on this drawing, each colored pencil stroke representing hope for a brighter future. Marcus maintained his position, but his attention was increasingly drawn to a figure that seemed out of place among the joyful families. The man in the gray hoodie stood alone near the rose garden, approximately 30 feet from where the princess was conducting her maternal greet. Unlike everyone else in attendance, he showed no signs of excitement or anticipation. Instead, his posture was rigid, his hands buried deep in his pockets, and his eyes fixed intently on the princess with an intensity that made Marcus's instincts flare. David Miller, the man in question, had been planning this moment for months. His descent into mental illness had been gradual, marked by increasing isolation and an unhealthy obsession with the royal family that had evolved from admiration into something far more dangerous. He had meticulously studied the princess's public schedule, identifying this charity event as the perfect opportunity to carry out his twisted plan. The hunting knife concealed in his jacket pocket had been sharpened to a razor's edge, and his disturbed mind had convinced him that his actions would somehow make him famous. The princess reached Emma's family, and the transformation in the little girl's face was nothing short of magical. Despite her pale complexion and the colorful scarf covering her head where her hair had once been, Emma's smile blazed with pure joy. "Your Highness," she said in a small but clear voice, "I made this for you." She held out her drawing with shaking hands, her eyes wide with wonder as the princess knelt down to her level. "This is absolutely beautiful, Emma," the princess said, accepting the artwork with genuine appreciation. "I can see you put so much love and care into creating this. Gwed, you tell me about all these wonderful colors you've used?" The princess's voice carried the perfect tone of adult interest mixed with childlike wonder, a skill that had endeared her to millions around the world. Emma's mother, Jennifer, watched with tears streaming down her face as her daughter experienced this perfect moment. The past 2 years had been filled with hospital visits, painful treatments, and sleepless nights wondering if her little girl would survive. To see Emma's face light up with such pure happiness made every struggle worthwhile. Jennifer pulled out her phone to capture the moment. Joining dozens of other parents documenting these precious interactions, Marcus spoke quietly into his radio. alerting Officer Collins to his concerns about the man in the gray hoodie. Sarah, I need you to observe the individual near the rose garden. Gray hoodie, approximately 5'10", dark hair.
Oh.
Something doesn't feel right about his behavior. Sarah acknowledged the message and began making her way through the crowd. Her approach carefully disguised as casual observation. The princess continued her conversation with Emma, asking about her drawings and her dreams for the future. I want to be an artist when I grow up, Emma shared, her voice growing stronger with confidence. I want to paint pictures that make people happy, just like meeting you makes me happy. The princess's eyes misted slightly at the child's innocent wisdom. Understanding the deeper meaning behind those simple words, Detective Inspector Hayes had also noticed the man in the gray hoodie and was quietly coordinating with his plainclothes officers to maintain surveillance without alarming the crowd. Years of experience had taught him to trust the instincts of protection officers like Marcus. He began positioning his team for a potential intervention. The crowd around the princess had grown larger as word spread through the courtyard about the touching interaction taking place. Parents held their children on their shoulders for better views. Smartphones captured every moment, and the general atmosphere was one of celebration and joy. Local news reporter Amanda Stevens was conducting live updates for the regional television station. Describing the heartwarming scene unfolding before the cameras, Marcus felt his pulse quicken as the man in the gray hoodie began showing signs of increased agitation. His body language had shifted, becoming more tense and purposeful. Most concerning was the way he had begun moving closer to the princess, while maintaining his solitary position away from the main crowd. Every instinct Marcus had developed over 15 years of protection work was now screaming that something was about to go very wrong. The princess had now spent several minutes with Emma, creating memories that would last a lifetime for the brave little girl and her family. As she prepared to move on to the next family, she gave Emma a gentle hug and whispered, "Keep creating beautiful art. Emma, the world needs more artists like you." The moment was captured by photographer James Mitchell, who later said it was one of the most genuinely moving scenes he had ever witnessed during his years covering royal events. Officer Collins had managed to position herself with a clear view of the suspicious individual, and what she observed sent a chill down her spine. The man's right hand was now moving restlessly inside his jacket pocket, and his breathing had become rapid and shallow. She immediately radioed Marcus with an urgent update. "Captain, the subject appears to be concealing something in his jacket. His behavior is escalating. We need to act now." The next few seconds would determine whether this beautiful day of hope and dreams would be remembered for joy or tragedy. Marcus knew that whatever was about to happen, he would need to rely on every ounce of training and experience he had accumulated over his years of service. The princess, still glowing from her interaction with Emma, remained completely unaware that her life was about to hang in the balance, dependent on the vigilance and quick reactions of those sworn to protect her. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as Marcus watched David Miller's hand emerge from his jacket pocket. The morning sunlight caught the polished steel blade of the hunting knife, creating a brief but unmistakable flash that sent ice through Marcus's veins. The weapon was substantial, a 6-inch fixed blade that had been honed to a razor's edge, designed for one purpose: to kill. Miller's arm moved in a practiced motion, the result of hours of secret rehearsal in his apartment. His mental illness had convinced him that this moment would make him infamous, that striking down the beloved princess would somehow validate his twisted worldview and give meaning to his deteriorating life. The knife left his hand with deadly precision, spinning end over end as it traced a lethal arc through the crisp morning air. The princess was still crouched down beside Emma, completely absorbed in examining the child's artwork and asking gentle questions about her dreams of becoming an artist. Her back was turned toward Miller, presenting a perfect target for the spinning blade that was now halfway through its deadly journey. She was pointing to specific details in Emma's drawing, her voice warm with genuine interest as she encouraged the brave little girl to continue pursuing her artistic passions despite her illness. Emma's mother, Jennifer, was lost in the joy of watching her daughter experience this magical moment. Through her phone's camera screen, she was recording every second of the interaction, wanting to preserve this perfect memory forever. The other families nearby continued to watch with smiles and quiet excitement, parents holding younger children for better views while older siblings captured photos and videos to share with friends. Marcus's mind calculated the trajectory of the spinning knife with the cold precision of a trained professional. The blade was moving at tremendous speed, its rotation creating a hypnotic pattern as it cut through the air. He had perhaps 2 seconds before the weapon would reach the princess, not enough time to shout a warning that would allow her to move. Not enough time to tackle the attacker, and certainly not enough time to reach her position and push her out of harm's way. Officer Collins had begun moving toward Miller, but was still too far away to prevent what was about to happen. Her training had taught her to assess threats and respond accordingly, but nothing had prepared her for watching a deadly weapon flying through the air toward a member of the royal family. She shouted into her radio for immediate backup while drawing her service weapon, knowing that stopping Miller now wouldn't prevent the knife from completing its deadly arc. Detective Inspector Hayes witnessed the attack unfold from his position near the castle's main entrance. His years of law enforcement experience had exposed him to violence and danger, but seeing a knife hurling through the air toward the princess created a moment of pure helplessness. He immediately began coordinating emergency medical response while his plainclothes officers moved to secure the perimeter and control the crowd. The knife continued its deadly spin, less than 10 feet from the princess's exposed back. Its weight and aerodynamics gave it tremendous penetrating power, more than enough to cause fatal injuries to anyone it struck. Miller watched with sick fascination as his weapon flew toward its target, his disturbed mind convinced that he was about to make history in the most twisted way possible. Marcus made his decision in a split second that would define the rest of his life. There was only one option available that might prevent tragedy. He had to intercept the knife with his own body. Without hesitation, he launched himself forward, his powerful legs driving him across the courtyard with explosive speed. His 15 years of physical training and combat readiness had prepared his body for moments like this. Even if his mind had never truly imagined facing such a scenario as Marcus dove through the air, time seemed to stretch impossibly long. He could see the knife's rotation, count each spin as the deadly blade turned end over end. He could hear Emma's innocent laughter as she continued talking with the princess about her artwork. He could see the unsuspecting faces of the crowd, still smiling and enjoying what they believed was a perfectly safe and joyful event. The princess began to rise from her crouched position, preparing to move on to the next family waiting to meet. Her movement inadvertently shifted her slightly to the left, altering the knife's target area by mere inches. Marcus adjusted his trajectory mid-flight, realizing that he would have just one chance to intercept the weapon before it found its mark. Marcus's outstretched hand reached toward the spinning knife, his fingers spread wide to maximize his chances of making contact with the weapon. The blade was now spinning directly toward the space between the princess's shoulder blades, a location that would likely prove fatal if the knife found its target. The weapon's handle rotated past his fingertips once, twice, as he stretched every muscle fiber to extend his reach. Behind them, Emma continued her animated conversation with the princess, her young voice filled with excitement as she described her favorite colors and the meaning behind different elements in her drawing. The rainbow means hope, she was explaining, because Mommy says rainbows come after storms, and I've had lots of storms, but I still have hope. The princess's eyes filled with tears at the child's wisdom, completely unaware of the drama unfolding. Just feet away, Jennifer continued, recording through her phone, her attention focused on capturing her daughter's magical moment. The screen showed Emma's animated face and the princess's genuine smile, a perfect scene of innocence and joy that was about to be shattered by violence. Other parents around them maintained their positions, still believing they were witnessing a routine royal engagement. Marcus's hand closed around the knife handle. Just as the weapon reached the space where the princess's back had been moments before, the razor-sharp blade bit deep into his palm, cutting through skin and muscle with sickening ease. Blood immediately began flowing between his fingers, but his grip remained firm and unwavering. The impact sent him stumbling backward, his momentum carrying him several steps away from the princess and Emma. The force of catching the spinning knife sent shockwaves of pain up Marcus's arm, but his training kept him focused on the immediate priorities: securing the weapon and ensuring the princess's safety. The crowd was about to discover that their perfect day had nearly become a national tragedy, saved only by the split-second reactions and personal sacrifice of one dedicated protector. Marcus's hand closed around the knife handle with desperate determination, the spinning blade slicing deep into his palm as he arrested its deadly flight. The impact sent waves of searing pain up his arm, but his grip remained iron-strong as blood began flowing freely between his fingers. The knife had been mere inches from the princess's back when he intercepted it, a fact that would haunt his dreams for months to come. Get down now," Marcus shouted with every ounce of authority his voice could muster, finally finding his ability to speak after the terrifying seconds of silent action. His training kicked in automatically: neutralize the immediate threat, secure the principal, control the scene. The bloodied knife remained clutched in his wounded hand as he positioned himself between the princess and any potential follow-up attack. The princess spun around at Marcus's urgent shouts, his confusion and alarm replacing the joy that had lit up her features moments before. Her eyes immediately focused on the blood streaming from his hand and the knife he held. An understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. Emma, still seated on the ground beside her drawing, looked up with wide, frightened eyes as the adults around her suddenly began moving with frantic urgency. Jennifer. Peterson's phone slipped from her trembling fingers as she witnessed the scene unfolding before her. One moment she had been recording her daughter's dream come true, and the next she was watching a royal protection officer bleeding from a wound that had somehow saved the princess's life. Her maternal instincts kicked in as she reached for Emma, pulling her daughter close while trying to process what had just happened. "Officer." Sarah Collins tackled David Miller with the full force of her body, driving him to the ground before he could produce any additional weapons or attempt to flee. Miller offered no resistance, his plan having failed so completely that he seemed to collapse into himself both physically and mentally. "I had to do it," he kept repeating as Collins secured his hands behind his back with zip-tie restraints. She had to know. They all had to know. The crowd erupted into chaos as people began to understand that they had just witnessed an assassination attempt. Parents grabbed their children, pulling them close while looking around frantically for additional threats. The joyful chatter that had filled the courtyard moments before was replaced by screams, crying, and the confused voices of people trying to understand what was happening. Detective Inspector Hayes barked orders into his radio while rushing toward the princess's location. "We need immediate medical response at the royal position. Officer down with severe lacerations. Suspect in custody, but scene not yet secure. Clear all civilians from the area immediately." His years of crisis management experience allowed him to coordinate multiple responses simultaneously while maintaining his focus on the immediate priorities. The princess, despite the shock and horror of the situation, immediately moved toward Marcus rather than seeking her own safety. Royal protocol demanded that she be evacuated immediately, but her human instincts overrode formal procedures as she saw the man, who had just saved her life, bleeding profusely from his wounds. "Someone get help," she called out, reaching toward Marcus's injured hand. "He's hurt badly." Marcus, even while fighting through the pain, continued his protective duties. "Ma'am, we need to move you to a secure location immediately. There may be additional threats." His voice remained steady and professional, despite the fire burning through his palm and fingers. Years of training had taught him that personal injury was secondary to the safety of those under his protection. Young Emma Peterson sat on the ground, her beautiful drawing now forgotten, as she watched the brave man who had somehow gotten hurt trying to keep everyone safe. Her 8-year-old mind couldn't fully comprehend what had occurred, but she understood that something very bad had almost happened and that this nice guard had stopped it. "Mommy, why is the guardman bleeding?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. The castle's medical team arrived within minutes, their emergency response training allowing them to quickly assess and begin treating Marcus's injuries. "Dr. Elizabeth." Morgan, the royal family's personal physician, who was always on standby during public events, immediately took charge of the medical situation. "We need to get this bleeding under control and get him to surgery immediately. The blade has severed multiple tendons and possibly damaged nerves." Marcus finally allowed himself to release the knife as medical personnel took control of the weapon. As evidence, the blood loss was significant, and he could feel his strength beginning to ebb as shock set in. "The princess," he managed to say, as Dr. Morgan worked to control the bleeding. "Is she safe? Are there any other threats?" Officer Collins had secured David Miller and was conducting a preliminary search of his person while awaiting the arrival of additional law enforcement. She discovered detailed plans in his pockets, including maps of the castle grounds and a timeline of the princess's scheduled activities. "Captain," she called out to Marcus, "the suspect had extensive planning materials. This was premeditated and well-researched." The media area had transformed from a celebration of royal engagement to the scene of a major international incident. Photographers who had been capturing heartwarming moments of the princess meeting with children were now documenting the aftermath of an assassination attempt. James Mitchell, the experienced royal correspondent, found himself struggling to maintain his professional composure as he realized how close he had come to witnessing tragedy. Princess Catherine refused to leave Marcus's side as paramedics prepared him for transport to the hospital. Royal protection protocols called for her immediate evacuation to a secure location, but she overruled her security team's recommendations. "This man saved my life," she stated firmly. "I'm not leaving until I know he's going to be all right, Dr. Ty." Morgan continued working on Marcus's hand while briefing the paramedics on his condition. "We have deep lacerations to the palm with severed flexor tendons, possible nerve damage, and significant blood loss. He needs immediate surgical intervention to preserve full function of the hand." The injury was severe enough that there were serious concerns about whether Marcus would ever regain complete use of his dominant hand. As Marcus was loaded into the ambulance, the princess made a decision that would be remembered for generations. Breaking royal protocol entirely, she climbed into the ambulance beside him, holding pressure on his bandaged wound while speaking words of encouragement and gratitude. "You saved my life, Marcus," she said softly, tears streaming down her face. "I will never forget what you did today." Emma Peterson watched the ambulance drive away, her young mind trying to process the events she had witnessed. The drawing she had worked so hard to create lay forgotten on the ground, but the memory of the brave guard who had gotten hurt protecting the princess would stay with her forever. She turned to her mother with the profound insight that sometimes comes from children. "Mommy, he was a real hero, wasn't he?" The ambulance raced through the streets of Windsor with its sirens wailing, carrying Marcus Thompson toward what would prove to be the most challenging recovery of his life. Princess Catherine held his uninjured hand throughout the journey, her presence providing comfort that transcended royal protocol and spoke to the fundamental human connection forged through shared trauma and gratitude. At Windsor Hospital, the emergency surgical team had been alerted and was standing by with everything needed for complex hand reconstruction surgery. Dr. James Patterson, one of Britain's leading hand surgeons, had been called in specifically for this case. Marcus was wheeled into the operating theater. The princess squeezed his hand one final time. "I'll be here when you wake up," she promised, her voice thick with emotion. The surgery lasted for hours as Dr. Patterson painstakingly reconnected severed tendons, repaired damaged nerves, and restored blood flow to the injured tissues. Knife had caused extensive damage to Marcus's dominant right hand, requiring microsurgical techniques to reattach the delicate structures that controlled fine motor function. The prognosis was uncertain while the surgery was successful. It would be months before anyone could determine if Marcus would regain full use of his hand. During the surgery, investigators worked to piece together the full scope of David Miller's plan. The 34-year-old man had been struggling with severe mental illness for over 2 years, gradually becoming isolated from family and friends as his condition worsened. His apartment revealed disturbing evidence of his obsession with the royal family, including detailed plans for multiple attack scenarios and a journal documenting his deteriorating mental state. Detective Inspector Hayes interviewed Miller once he had been processed and was awaiting formal charges. The man showed clear signs of psychiatric disturbance, alternating between periods of lucidity and episodes where he seemed completely disconnected from reality. "I had to stop them," Miller repeated during questioning. "The voices told me it was the only way to make them listen. They needed to know the truth." Back at Windsor Castle, the investigation continued as forensic teams processed the crime scene and interviewed witnesses. 8-year-old Emma Peterson had been particularly affected by the events, and child psychologists were called in to help her process what she had witnessed. Her drawing, which had been abandoned during the chaos, was carefully preserved as evidence, but would later be returned to her as a reminder of her brave interaction with the princess, Emma's mother. Jennifer struggled to explain to her daughter what had happened. "The guardman saw someone trying to hurt the princess," she said carefully, "and he stopped the bad person from doing it. He got hurt because he was being very brave and protecting everyone." Emma listened with the serious attention that children give to important adult explanations, processing the concept of heroism and sacrifice. At the hospital, Princess Catherine maintained her vigil outside the operating room, refusing all attempts by her security detail to convince her to return to the palace. She understood that her presence was creating logistical challenges and attracting media attention, but she felt morally obligated to stay with the man who had saved her life. Royal Press Secretary Amanda Phillips worked tirelessly to manage the growing media circus while respecting the princess's wishes. The story of Marcus's heroic act spread around the world within hours, with social media amplifying the dramatic footage captured by witnesses. The video showed the knife spinning through the air and Marcus's incredible catch, a sequence that many viewers initially thought must be fake due to its almost superhuman timing and precision. News outlets struggled to find adequate words to describe the split-second decision that had prevented a national tragedy. Dr. Patterson emerged from surgery after 4 hours, his scrub stained with blood and his face showing the exhaustion of intense concentration. "The surgery went as well as could be expected," he reported to the anxious princess. "We were able to repair most of the damage, but he'll need extensive physical therapy and rehabilitation. It's too early to say if he'll regain full function, but his chances are good if he commits to the recovery process." Marcus awakened in the recovery room to find Princess Catherine sitting beside his bed, her eyes red from crying, but her expression filled with relief and gratitude. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly as he struggled to focus through the post-surgical haze. His right hand was heavily bandaged and immobilized, but the pain was manageable thanks to medication. "Is everyone safe?" Marcus asked, his professional instincts overriding his personal concerns even in his weakened state. "At the crowd. Emma and her family?"
"At."
"Were there any other threats we missed?"
"At."
The princess smiled through her tears, recognizing the dedication that made Marcus exceptional at his job. "Everyone is safe because of you," she replied, gently squeezing his uninjured left hand. "Emma wants to draw you a new picture, something about her hero guard. Her mother says she's been asking when she can visit you to make sure you're okay." The princess's voice carried the warmth of someone who had witnessed the impact of Marcus's actions on the innocent family that had been present. News of the attack and Marcus's heroic response reached the highest levels of government and the royal family. The Queen herself called the hospital to inquire about Marcus's condition and to express her personal gratitude for his service. Prime Minister Richardson issued a statement praising Marcus's extraordinary courage and dedication to duty, while security services began a comprehensive review of protection protocols. Physical therapist Rebecca Martinez was assigned to Marcus's case and began working with him within days of the surgery. "The hand is incredibly complex," she explained during their first session. "We're not just dealing with muscle and bone, we're talking about nerve pathways that control everything from gross motor function to the finest surgical precision. Your recovery will require patience, dedication, and probably some frustration." Marcus's fellow protection officers visited regularly, providing both moral support and updates from the ongoing investigation. Officer Sarah Collins, who had tackled the attacker, brought news that Miller was receiving mental health treatment while awaiting trial. "His lawyers are pushing for a psychiatric evaluation," she reported. "It's clear he needs serious help." But that doesn't excuse what he tried to do. The princess established a routine of daily visits during Marcus's initial recovery, bringing flowers, books, and updates from the outside world. Her presence attracted significant media attention, but she remained steadfast in her commitment to supporting the man who had saved her life. These visits revealed a more personal side of the princess that the public rarely saw: someone deeply affected by the sacrifice made on her behalf. Emma Peterson's recovery from witnessing the attack progressed well with the help of child counselors and her family's loving support. She had indeed created a new drawing for Marcus, this one showing him as a superhero with a cape, catching the knife in midair while protecting the princess. Heroes get hurt sometimes, she had told the counselor, but they get better because they're strong and brave. 6 months after that fateful day at Windsor Castle, Marcus Thompson returned to active duty with a hand that bore the permanent scars of his heroic act. The long road to recovery had tested his patience and determination in ways that 15 years of protection work had never challenged him. Physical therapy sessions with Rebecca Martinez had become a daily routine, each exercise designed to restore the fine motor control and grip strength that were essential for his profession. Dr. Patterson had been cautiously optimistic about Marcus's progress throughout the rehabilitation process. "You've regained about 90% function," he explained during a follow-up appointment. "The remaining 10% may never fully return, but what you've achieved is remarkable considering the severity of the initial injury. Your dedication to the recovery process made all the difference." The scar across Marcus's palm had become a permanent reminder of that split second when everything changed. Unlike many scars that people try to hide, Marcus wore his with quiet pride, understanding that it represented not just his own courage, but the sacred trust between protector and protected. His grip strength had returned to near-normal levels, and his reflexes remained as sharp as ever. Princess Catherine had visited Marcus regularly throughout his recovery, bringing updates about Emma Peterson's progress and her own reflections on the event that had bonded them forever. "I think about that day constantly," she confided during one of her visits. "Not just the attack, but everything that followed your courage, Emma's resilience, the way people came together. It changed something in me, made me appreciate the human cost of protection in a way I never had before." The formal ceremony at Buckingham Palace took place on a crisp autumn morning, with Marcus's family, colleagues, and several of the families from the charity event in attendance. Emma Peterson, now fully recovered from her cancer treatments and sporting a head of curly brown hair, sat in the front row wearing her best dress and holding the drawing she had created of Marcus as a superhero. Her Majesty the Queen personally presented Marcus with the Royal Victorian Order, one of the highest honors that could be bestowed for service to the crown. "Captain Thompson," she said in her clear, authoritative voice, "your actions on that day exemplified the very highest ideals of duty, courage, and selfless service. The entire nation owes you a debt of gratitude that can never be fully repaid." Princess Catherine stood beside the Queen during the ceremony, her eyes reflecting the deep gratitude she felt every time she thought about how different that day could have ended. As she pinned the medal to Marcus's uniform, she whispered words meant only for him. "Thank you for giving me the chance to continue serving others. Your sacrifice made that possible." The ceremony was attended by members of Marcus's protection team, including Officer Sarah Collins, who had been commended for her quick action in apprehending the attacker. Detective Inspector Hayes was also recognized for his coordination of the emergency response, and Dr. Patterson received acknowledgement for his skillful surgery that had saved Marcus's career. David Miller's case had concluded with a verdict of guilty but mentally ill, resulting in his commitment to a secure psychiatric facility for intensive treatment. Mental health advocates had used his case to highlight the need for better support systems for people struggling with severe psychiatric conditions. Marcus had followed the case closely, feeling no anger toward Miller, but rather a complex mix of pity and determination to prevent similar incidents. The video footage of Marcus catching the knife had become one of the most watched security incidents in modern history, studied by protection agencies around the world, and used as a training example of split-second decision-making under extreme pressure. Security academies incorporated the incident into their curricula, analyzing not just Marcus's physical response, but the situational awareness and threat assessment that made his reaction possible. Marcus found the attention overwhelming at times, preferring to focus on his return to normal duties rather than dwelling on the fame that had come with his actions. He had received thousands of letters from around the world, many from children who saw him as a real-life superhero. Each letter was carefully read and, when possible, personally answered, though Marcus always emphasized in his responses that he had simply done his job. Emma Peterson had become something of a celebrity herself. Her story of resilience in the face of cancer, inspiring people across the globe. She had beaten her illness completely and was thriving in school, where her teachers noted her exceptional empathy and her desire to help other children who were struggling. Her artwork had evolved beyond simple drawings to more sophisticated pieces that often featured themes of protection, heroism, and hope. The relationship between Emma and Marcus had developed into something resembling that of an uncle and niece. He visited her family regularly, attending her school art shows and celebrating milestones in her recovery. Emma's mother, Jennifer, often said that having Marcus in their lives had helped Emma process the trauma of that day and transform it into something positive and inspiring. The charity event had been redesigned and expanded into an annual celebration called Hope and Heroes, combining support for sick children with recognition of everyday heroes in the community. Princess Catherine served as the patron of the event, and Marcus was always invited as the guest of honor, though he typically preferred to work the event as part of the security detail rather than be celebrated as its centerpiece. Marcus's return to active duty had not been without challenges. Some of his colleagues worried that the trauma of the incident might affect his judgment or reaction times. However, psychological evaluations and performance assessments consistently showed that he remained at the peak of his profession. If anything, the experience had deepened his commitment to protection work and his understanding of its profound importance. The attack had led to significant improvements in security protocols for royal events, threat assessment protocols, and improved coordination between different security agencies had all emerged from the comprehensive review that followed the incident. Marcus had been actively involved in developing these improvements, his unique perspective as both protector and victim providing valuable insights. Officer Sarah Collins had been promoted following her exemplary performance during the crisis, and she often worked alongside Marcus on high-profile assignments. Their partnership had been strengthened by the shared experience of that day, creating a professional bond built on mutual respect and proven reliability under pressure. 3. Years after the attack, Marcus received a special Christmas card that brought tears to his eyes. It was from Emma, now 11 years old and thriving in her role as a big sister to the baby brother her family had welcomed the previous year. The card featured her most sophisticated artwork yet, a detailed portrait of Marcus in his dress uniform, standing guard outside Windsor Castle. Inside the card, Emma had written, "Dear Captain Marcus, Mom says that heroes don't think they're heroes. They just do what's right when it matters most. Thank you for being my hero and for showing me that. Even when scary things happen, there are always good people ready to help. I'm going to be an artist like I told the princess, and I'm going to paint pictures that remind people that heroes are real and they're all around us. Love, Emma." Marcus kept that card on his desk at work, where it served as a daily reminder of why his job mattered and why the sacrifices made in service to others created ripples of goodness that extended far beyond any single moment of action. The scar on his palm had faded somewhat over time, but the memory of that day remained as vivid as ever, not as a burden, but as a source of pride and purpose. The princess continued to send Marcus's personal notes on significant anniversaries, including the date of the attack and his birthday. These messages always struck the perfect balance between formal gratitude and personal warmth, acknowledging the unique bond created by their shared experience while respecting the professional boundaries that governed their relationship. As Marcus looked back on that day at Windsor Castle, he realized that catching the knife had been just the beginning of a story that continued to unfold in countless ways. Emma's recovery and artistic success, the improvements in security that would protect future events, the inspiration his actions had provided to others facing their own moments of crisis. All of these were part of the legacy of those few seconds when training. Instinct and courage had combined to change the course of history. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest changes. And sometimes a split-second decision to put others before yourself becomes the foundation for a lifetime of meaning and purpose. Marcus Thompson had learned that true heroism isn't about seeking recognition or glory, it's about being ready when seconds count. And when they do, having the courage to act without hesitation for the sake of those who depend on your protection.